I don't know how long ago, but what we're doing is going through the letters in courage, and we're now on the letter R. We finished up the letter U last week. So the word I chose for today is resilience or resiliency or resilience. So there's a lot of different forms to the word, but it kind of means they all mean the same. It's just one's a noun, one's an adverb, one's an adjective. So I thought, well, resilience is the power or ability of a material or person to adjust, recover, face adversity or major life changes, to return to its original form after being bent, compressed, or stretched. Elasticity. Okay, so let's talk about how that relates to taking action, since that's our theme this month. So I usually give the definition and then we just talk about it, and then I can share synonyms and different ways, but resiliency is a state of quality of being resilient. So I know all of you well and know that you are resilient. So let's talk about how does that be a part of our being, Nancy? How does resilience, being resilient, be a part of who we are, how we show up, how we take up space, how we communicate and connect? So let's just kind of explore that way of being resilient. Okay? Alrighty, I'm going to open it up. I always tell you, as a teacher, I know how to pause.
I'll jump in. I was just actually heard a woman say on Facebook. She had a little video and she was talking about the 3 things she learned, and the last one was about that. Sometimes you learn the lesson. If you don't learn the lesson, you'll keep getting the lesson over and over again, right? And she said, but sometimes you learn the lesson, and you still get more lessons afterwards, and she said, and that's okay, like accepting that. And I thought to myself as I was listening to that to me what that meant was that there's a deeper lesson that we need to learn, that we can go deeper. And for me, as you're talking about resilience and action, I thought that to me the deeper lesson is part of that resilience, because the deeper the lesson, the better we can be resilient. That's what I was literally thinking about as you were talking. And it's not a bad thing. If we don't learn the lesson, then we haven't learned anything, and we are doomed to continue. But it's never fun when you get it over and over again and you're not open to learning. So I love the opportunity to say, this is like we were talking earlier, you got the flat tire thing going on. Well, that could have happened while you were on your way to Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
what a blessing that it happened in your driveway. And you could look at that and say, wow, I'm so grateful that that happened now, not when I was driving to Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
that is like a little lesson that you can show gratitude even in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned gratitude, because that is, again, a state of being, to be in the state of gratitude and looking at every opportunity, every challenge, every moment we make a choice, and having gratitude for whatever results, and learning from that. That's life. That's what life's all about. That's why we're here, is to learn. And oftentimes we learn from our challenges more deeply than we learn from the ease of the experience or the activity. True? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Leah.
So, Terry, would you mind reading the definition again?
Sure. I would not mind at all. Let me get back to it. Okay. So this is resiliency as a noun, the ability of a person to adjust or recover readily from illness, adversity, major life changes, after being compressed or stretched from its original position. So elasticity is also one of the words that it does. And when you look at the synonyms for resiliency, they are buoyancy, which I think that's kind of a fun word to say. Buoyancy. Oh, now I lost it on my thing. Let's see, what's this? Okay. Okay. I've lost those. Anyway, that's the meaning for it as a noun.
Yeah, I
Does that
think
help?
so. I'm glad I asked you to reread it because when you first read it, I had this huge resistance. And it was because what I heard was like the ability to adjust, recover, face adversity, and then come back to the original state. And I was like, oh, like, but then there's not room for, and the first word's adjust, right? But then when you just reread it, what I heard is no, you're stretched from your original state and you can adjust to that. And I
Right.
think
Right.
that
I
is,
think I
yeah,
think the one part coming back to the original state would be an object.
uh, yes,
Yeah. That's
yes,
I think that was talking more not about a person, but
yeah,
about the resiliency of an object.
okay, okay, yeah, because and I'm going ooh, but because I and to me, I think resiliency in my past has been like, oh, I'm resilient. I've got to, which has been push it down and stay where I'm at instead of resilience being, um, rise up with the new circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I thought about this word. First, I wanted to say, so I'm Brianna Moravik Miller, and I practice marriage and family therapy. And so when you, Terry, were talking about this word of resilience, I feel like there is this capacity for me to think about how when you said the definition of major life changes. And I think that that's where I apply it pretty significantly in my life professionally, but also personally, where I'm thinking about how have I bounced back? When you were saying that, like the buoyancy, I was like, oh my goodness, that really is so significant. And how do we apply that? And the bounce back isn't always easy and it doesn't always look the same. And so when thinking about like how are we going to apply that to the action part of this, what are things in my life, what are things in all of our lives where we have either bounced back really slowly or it's taken us a little bit more time, or things that we have resilience where we just kind of know our path and then we bounce back, so like it's really quick. And when thinking about kind of like taking action steps for this upcoming month, I had to apply that to there's been a lot of changes, decisions, choices that I have made recently, professionally and personally, where it's taken me a little bit longer to bounce back. It's taken me a little bit longer to take the steps to say, it's okay. It's okay to, take time to do the things. And then there's other things I'm really energetic and excited about. So I feel like, oh, let's do this. Like that's the bouncing back. So I think that like the positive side of that, because I do feel like resilience, and especially in my professional life, gets applied maybe more of an in a negative way. That, oh, you have to be resilient because you have to survive, you have to, and actually resilience can be really beautifully positive too. And I think that that's, I don't know, that's kind of encouraging. When I was writing, I wrote all that down, Nancy, as you were talking, and Terry, as you guys were talking, that what does that look like as far as like it can be a positive, it doesn't always have to be associated to negative.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting.
professionally,
Yeah.
yeah, professionally, I feel like it is kind of
I
resilience,
think
feel
well, I
positive.
think it's what like Kelly always says, everything can be done in fear or freedom. It's only negative when it's a fearful thing, right? Because I don't, in my lifetime and thinking of resilience, I've always thought of it as positive. No matter what the circumstance is, it's my mindset is I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to, it may take me a while to get to that point where I understand what I learned from this, but I'm convinced the world is for me. The world is not out to get me, it's for me. And so when you talked about buoyancy, this was kind of cute. It said in here that the dictionary also says resilience can mean buoyancy, which is the ability to float. And when we think of staying above water, I mean, the opposite of float is sinking, right? So, and when you think of buoyancy, I think of water. You know, because that's actually probably the literal, you know, that the buoy out in the, you know, we swim to the buoy in the lake, and you know that's what you can hang on to if you're, you know, get left in the water or whatever. So I think of floating. We talked about steering the other day, steering our life and keeping on the path. Well, resilience would keep us above water, floating, you know, being able to, I don't know, floating is a really calm state for me. I love to swim. When I learned how to float as a kid, that was such a big deal to me because I could lay there on top of the water and just look up at the sky and just be so peaceful. So all of us have different experiences, right? With words, with you know, like some people hate to swim and they don't float, they sink, you know. So it's like it's a skill. I mean, it's a learned thing, and if you're not relaxed and you fear, you're going to sink. So I was just reading through these definitions and sentences again, and I thought that is a really, for me now, that's going to be a part of my understanding, my vocabulary. When I think about resilience, I'm going to think about buoyancy. And I'm going to think, yes, I'm going to stay above water. I'm going to look at this as an opportunity to learn that the world is for me, and I can keep my mindset, you know, like Mel Robbins says in the five habit thing. Tell yourself, I'm not thinking about that today. When those thoughts start to come into your head, you say, I'm not thinking about that. And you can say it over and over until you don't think about that. You know, the negative, what are they called? Saboteurs, Nancy? Those things that come into our mind that help us, you know, they create the space to sink. They don't sink us. It's our thoughts that sink us. So to stay buoyancy and resilient, it's a mindset switch. You know, it's telling ourselves that the world is for us. Like this morning, what happened this morning, I did something, I can't remember now, but I started to say to myself, can you ever do anything right? And then I'm not going to say that to myself. And I went back and give myself a high five again, because it's just, our mind is so, can be so resilient to those ideas, or it can take them in. And so again, resisting those thoughts. And that's actually, we're going to talk about resistance next month when we talk about the R word for courage. But I think resiliency is floating above the challenges and your mind telling you know, go ahead, take action. You can do it. Just do it.
Can I just, I'm a very visual human, and I had a vision that came to me while you guys were talking of, now I don't know if it's one of the Asian countries, either China or Japan, that when a cup breaks, they take the broken pieces and they put gold in there to fix it. And then the cup is still beautiful in a different way, and it's stronger because of how they put it back together. And to me, that was the picture of resilience, is that when we have things that happen to us, we are broken in pieces, but at where we were broken, we become stronger because of the lessons that we learned. So that was, I don't know why, but that was the visual that just came. So I had to share that. So
I love that. I love that. I've seen pictures of those, and I believe it's China, where they've put those back together with the gold, and it's that's a beautiful practice. And I don't have gold to put things together, but I do have resiliency to put myself back together. And I guess that's the flexibility. And it's like resiliency can create this new beautiful piece of art, right? That's us. We can create a new version of ourselves based upon how resilient we are to those challenges that might sink us. We can stay buoyant above the. Yeah, I love that. I'm seeing myself floating in the lake when I was a little kid. I won't even go in a lake now because I think of the fish and all the stuff that's in there. When I was a kid, I didn't care.
Yeah.
Leah's making me want to smash a cup and put it back together in my head. That really is beautiful when you think, and I love too, Leah, that you said that you're a visual person. I literally just on our page in our planner, I just drew, and maybe because we're talking about Alaska, but I just drew an iceberg because on social media I had seen the iceberg, and the top of it's like all of these like really positive, amazing things, but then the iceberg underneath is humongous. Yes. And so even that, and Terry talking about floating in the lake too, and I was like, that to me was the picture of resilience. Like, what does that look like? All of these, like, it's still floating even though it's humongous, right? And there's still all these positives and negatives that are feeding into, if you're thinking about, if you guys have ever seen that, the social media iceberg thing about like what you can see, what the surface level is, and the underneath. And I feel like that whole picture of resilience that was my visualization. Now I also am going to draw a teacup on my page because Leah inspired me to do that. But yeah, this idea of we can't see it all, but we can build up, and what does that look like? I think is really beautiful when we think about what does resilience actually look like in applying that to our life. And it doesn't always have to look exactly the same. Every teacup that gets broken looks different when you put it back together, but every teacup is different, right? Or every cup is different. So I think that piece of it too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great. Yeah, the more visualization I can get, the better. Yeah. And I can't think of icebergs. I'm sorry. I can't think of icebergs without thinking of the Titanic. So there you go. That's where my brain goes.
Same.
I mean,
Berg, straight ahead.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I actually saw that movie in the movie theater 13 times. I'm obsessed with the story of the Titanic. I've read and watched every documentary there is about it. I just think it's such a talk about a visual of being prepared and being, looking ahead and not have to be right, that we're going to get there fast. And so we're going to go too fast. And now we're going to hit it. And, I just think it has so much message to it. Besides, I think it was a nice love story. But resilient. Yeah, great.
It's interesting that the Titanic is also a message of a warning of hubris, because they believed they couldn't be sunk. So they didn't have enough lifeboats and things for people. Right. And had they prepared and thought ahead, some of those people wouldn't have died. So absolutely. I think it's a big warning to never be too confident. You need to always be prepared regardless of how strong you feel.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it's also, it's also like a really good study into human nature, right? How they reacted, how the people reacted. And I don't know. Anyway, back to resilience. I digress.
When you were talking, Terry, about, the high five thing and like telling yourself, I'm not going to think about that today or whatever. And my head goes to the old joke of, if you tell people what not to think about, that's what they think about, right? And so it's kind of like interesting that Mel puts it out there, but tell yourself not to think about it. And like that's to me the first step of, and what do you want to think about instead?
Exactly.
Right? Which is then you went back and you give yourself the high five, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I am rocking it today or whatever, and here's how. But that when I look at the definition of resilience, what I wrote down is that I underlined adversity, like that's our own internal adversity, that fighting with ourselves, right? And so, face it by saying, no, I'm not saying that. And what do I want to say instead, right? But then there's the word. And so I love that. That's like there's adversity all around. Sometimes it's external, but a lot of times it's our own internal baggage. And so facing that, claiming it, and then recovering from it. And the word recover really is showing up for me. Like I'm pretty good at adjusting to things. I'm pretty good at facing it like, okay, let's just go. Like, well, okay, this is where we're at. We're going to do it. And I got thinking about the recover word and I thought, do I really, like when Bree, when you were talking about, some things it's longer or slower. And I thought, do I really recover all the time? Or do I just keep going? And I don't think it's all necessarily you have to do all of it. Resilience is some of each, probably, depending on the situation. But it just made me think for myself, I'm pretty good at adjusting. Okay, I'll figure this out. What's the new route I'm going to take if a road's closed or, whatever. But recovering, I don't know that I always allow the space for.
Welcome, Kelly. Quickly, can we celebrate something with you before we continue?
Well, I'll celebrate being here. I meant to be here earlier, but it's good to see all of these beautiful faces.
We'll celebrate that as well. So we're talking about resilience, and we've brought up a couple of interesting ideas about buoyancy, and a synonym being able to float above the challenges. We've talked about recovery. We've talked a little bit about Mel Robbins' high five habit, where she tells herself when she starts to have a negative thought or a self defeating thought, she says, I'm not thinking about that today. And then switching that to what you want to think about, because our thoughts, we are our thoughts, right? As a man thinketh, so is he.
Yep.
I was thinking about the action part. The action word is, that's our focus this month. And I was thinking about even just the idea, Terry, that you were sharing from the book saying, hey, don't think about that today, right? Like put that away, like to get rid of that limiting belief. Like, and even just taking that action, like it seems when I think action, I'm like, okay, what are these really big things we have to do? But maybe it's some of these small things, like just the choice, right? Just the small action of being able to say, oh no, I'm not going to think about that today, can make such a significant, it can change how we're communicating with ourselves and other people. And I wrote that down too as like a highlighted thing, that because I thought about what Nancy said about this idea of when you I have small children, right? And so when I say, okay, don't do that, or that's not safe, I think he looks right at me. He's two, looks right at me, and he's like, yes, I am going to jump off that. And in my head, I was like, no, you know, right? But that association of when you say no, it's testing those boundaries, it's testing those
Yeah.
limits. And so even this idea of like, okay, I'm not going to think about that today, or I'm going to put that limiting belief away, but that's an action, and being really conscious of that action sometimes is really hard. It's really hard to actually apply that. And so I wrote that down too as this can be actions, even though they're small, can be so extremely beneficial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's those small decisions or choices that we make that lead to the action. And I am of the mindset that everything I do, every word I say, every thought that comes to me is an action if I follow through on that. And it's those actions that build up to my capacity to be resilient and my capacity to face adversity, or I like to say face challenges. The word adversity is a word I don't like at all. And it's those small acts of courage, those small acts of, I mean, they are acts, which is part of action. Every act that we participate in is a part of our action, our forward movement or our lack of forward movement. So I love that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think also it's powerful to instead of saying I'm not going to think of that right now or today, saying, challenging the belief and reinforcing the positive belief or the thing that you're wanting to choose to believe about yourself, and repeating that, and saying that to yourself over and over again, you know, uh, instead of I'm not, right? Because our brain doesn't hear not.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and then also, like, I am not good at this, but I'm just saying, it came to my mind, when our kids want to do something that is, dangerous, right? And I know as when my kids were younger, I was the one that was like, "Oh, don't do that," or "You're gonna hurt yourself," right? But what if we like said, "Okay, if you really want to jump off that, I want you to hold my hand so I can help guide you to the ground," right? So you're allowing them to do what they're wanting to do, but you're making it safe for you, so that compromise of meeting both of your needs. And that just came to my mind right now. That's not how I used to parent my young children, but just thinking of my older kids, like Arisa dyed or bleached her hair last night, her whole head, and she asked her two younger sisters to help her do it, and it did not go well. And I was laying on my bed. It's not easy for me to sit up right now. And but I was like, "Do you want me to come help?" And she eventually said yes. And I went in there and I did one section of her hair because they were doing it sections at a time. I did one section of her hair. And because I did that, the younger girls were more confident in doing it going forward because they could see, like, this is how you section out the hair and this is how you cover it and this is right. Um, and stuff. So I was like, instead of saying, "Do not bleach your hair, you're gonna burn your scalp." I was like, "Okay, let me help you do it in a way that you won't burn your scalp or it won't turn out looking orange or you know what I mean." So,
That's courage right there. Brave mom helping, helping your daughter bleach her hair.
it eventually turned out fine. They figured it out, um, but it's like they get these things in their head that they want to do that I so don't want them to do. And what I've tried to do is give like options to make it not as bad or to make it bother me less. But I've also have let go of things knowing that they're not me. And the things that are important to me aren't necessarily important to them. And, you know, when it comes down to it, if they have hot pink hair, it doesn't mean anything about my mothering skills or anything about them. And, you know, so I've chilled more as they've gotten older.
That's interesting, Kelly, because what it makes me think of is like, what are we being resilient for? Or why are we being resilient? Because as a mother, oftentimes I was being resilient because no, that's the way it's supposed to be done, and I want it that way, right? Again, anything can be done out of fear or freedom. My fear, I don't know what my fear was, but you know, I'm not going to be a good mother if my kids aren't safe or whatever, right? So why am like, and is that really resilient? Like that's, you know, resilient is about adjusting. And so I go back to my view of the word from my own experience. A lot of times is resilient means like sticking with something. And that's more persistence, not necessarily resilience. So I think, you know, it's really helpful to talk through the real meaning of some words versus how we've experienced it in our lives.
Yeah, when Kelly was talking about that, it's again, she's staying above being right, above wanting to impose her desires or wishes or what's right or wrong on her children. She's staying above that. So she's being buoyant. She's steering, you know, some of the words that we've been talking about. You know, I love words. I'm a wordsmith. So it's I think that's really interesting way to look at it again for me. That resilience is staying above the fray, staying above the you know, what lies beneath the water, the unknown, you know, just what is it? I'm going to be above that, and I'm going to adapt to whatever shows up in my life. I'll be flexible. I'll be open-minded. I will be in a state of resilience, a state of being, I like that word, buoyant. I really do.
I don't mean to jump in again, but when Kelly was talking, it reminded me, I am past the stage that Bree is in. Now I have young adults, and the mistakes they make are more costly at this age and a little scarier for me. So I find myself in a place of fear because I want them to. So what happened? We had a conversation this week, to give an example. My son, he is unfortunately like me, and he's constantly looking for the next business he wants to do. He's very excited and entrepreneurial, which is lovely. I love that. I have a lot of energy around that. So his new thing is he wants to start a junk hauling business, and he's looking at trucks to buy and talking to people. And I'm going, well, have you thought about this? And have you thought about this? And you know, because I'm coming from as a woman who's been there, done that. And he's like, Mom, I don't want you to put your fear on me. Let me do this. And I'm like, oh, that is my fear coming out. So I now don't know how much, what the right amount of conversation is without my fear coming on him and me just being someone who's older and wiser and pragmatic. So I'm just keeping my mouth shut at this point, listening and hoping that God has got this. But this is like a new level of courage for me to sit back and let my children make their own mistakes well, it's sort of like watching them go off the cliff and saying, have a nice trip. And I can't do that real well. So
Yeah.
You know,
I don't think any of us do.
I
Yeah.
also, Leah, that you, so even like the parenting side of it, right? My kids are much younger, but the parenting side of that and the fact that he was able to actually say that to you, like, Mom, don't put your fear on me, means you have already had collective conversations with him. In that he did feel comfortable to say that, and even have that conversation with you. So I think that that's a really encouraging thing to hear, because even those simple conversations that we don't, right? So I'm having those conversations now, like that are very small conversations in the young age, for my hope one day that my son and daughter can come back to me and say, hold on, Mom, that's your thought, that's your process, that's, and so I think that all of the hard work that you have already put in has allowed you guys to have that conversation, even if he's either going to be really productive and amazing at it, or he might fail, and that's okay too. But I think that you've already had those conversations, those preparatory things, those years of parenting, which allows us to have the space to say, hey, what does this actually look like?
thank you. That was good feedback, good perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, and what came to me, Leah, is that maybe asking for his permission, right? Because there are things that that he doesn't, right? And say, okay, I can see possible gaps in this plan. Can I ask you some questions so that I can see that you have a plan for these things? Or if you don't, I can support you with resources or information or whatever to help you navigate this new business, right?
Thank you. That's good. I have pointed him towards like the SBDC and like official organizations so that he talks to someone else, because I think coming from Mom, it's not, even though I've got lots of experience, it's still Mom with lots of experience. But when he talks to an official entity and they say you need to have an EIN number and you have to do this, it's a lot better conversation. So I just say, this is where I went when I needed help. So
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I could talk a lot about some of my kids, but one of them's on here, so I won't. But she's certainly been an example of resiliency to me, and an example of growth that has, like, for me to be resilient has required me to change my way of dealing with her. The way that we communicate has changed a lot because of her ability to become more resilient, more independent, more confident. And as a mom, don't you want that? Yeah, but man, you don't depend on me anymore. So all of my kids are adults, my kids are grandparents. So it's like I've got this whole history of being practicing to be resilient as a parent, because as they grow and change and become their own person, there's a lot of, like you said, Leah, keeping your mouth shut, letting them have their experience, being there as a support if things fail, but not putting that into their mind, that's not going to work. I tried that. Yeah. Well, ladies, I've loved this discussion. It's now 10 minutes of the hour. So we will come to a conclusion. Love having all of you here. Becky, not just you and I talking about the word. So it's wonderful to have everybody here. I am going to ask a favor, though. Since Lee and I were talking, I have this flat tire that I need to get fixed because Kelly and I are going to LA this weekend. And so I have an appointment at the shop at 8:00. So if I could let one of you finish this up for me. I think that somebody is the co-host, Becky. So if you could be the host for me and just I'm going to change that.